Welcome to the RE Human Layer Security podcast, the show that flips the script on cybersecurity. I'm Tim Sadler, the CEO and co-founder of Tessian, and in each episode, I'll be interviewing IT and business leaders about why we need to protect people, not just machines and data, to stop breaches and empower businesses to achieve their missions. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another season of the RE Human Layer Security podcast. I'm delighted that you've come back for more human layer security insights, and I promise that you will not be disappointed with the lineup of terrific speakers we have for season 2. Which leads me to introduce our first guest, James McQuiggan, security awareness advocate at KnowBe4. In his role, James is responsible for amplifying messaging related to the importance, effectiveness, and the need for security awareness training within organizations. And he is passionate in campaigning for a new school approach to security training in the enterprise. Delighted to welcome James to the show. James, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, Tim. Excited to be here and always enjoy talking about human layer and that eighth layer of security that we're always dealing with.
So first of all, I wanted to say a big congratulations to you and the KnowBe4 team on your recent IPO. I think it's a huge achievement. I wanted to ask, since the announcement, do you think enterprises have become more interested in understanding about the human factor in security?
Well, thank you very much. We are very excited about the IPO and where KnowBe4 is going. But honestly, even before the IPO, we've seen interest from organizations of all different sizes, all different industries, wanting to build up their human firewalls, build up that human layer of security and increase their knowledge when it comes to cybersecurity, against all of these sophisticated phishing attacks and social engineering attacks that we're seeing in the industry.
Yeah, I think it makes complete sense. I think you only get to IPO when you've got all of that. You've got all that traction. You've already got that validation. Right. Now, I wanted to get to this point. You've mentioned in a number of other talks as well, and it was in my introduction. But this new school approach to security and awareness training in the organization. Tell me about that. What do you mean by this new school approach?
So the old school approach, which in the comparison of it all, we think back, and I think back even to when I was getting in security awareness 11, 12 plus years ago, the security awareness that was out there dealt with, all right, everybody, we're going to do a lunch and learn and come on in. I'm going to have a PowerPoint presentation, or they'll have a security person come in and there might be donuts or coffee or snacks or lunch, or you do something to entice people to come in and you give a presentation. And then that's it. You might even have something where it's a computer-based training where they go through, and honestly, they go through and click next and next and next and next, get to the end. Oh, a little 5-question quiz. Okay, it's easy, done. And then that's it. And they might remember the information. They might not. The new school kind of changes the whole concept of training and making it so that there's a variety of different factors. It's not just a computer-based training once a year. It's going to be something that's engaging and something that's interesting, something that appeals to that end user, whether you're using animations, whether it's videos. It's not just somebody talking, but it's got to stick. It's got to be something where the end user is going to feel a connection to it and want to take an interest in security and realize that, oh, okay, when I see that phishing email or that link, I need to hover over that, or I need to make sure that I'm using a password vault so that, my passwords are secure. I'm not using the same ones. That kind of goes towards driving that overall security culture. Essentially, if users don't relate to it or don't feel to that it applies to them, they're not going to care. You look at some of the trainings that within our own organizations that we got to go through, not just cybersecurity. It might be an accounting one. It might be a finance one, an expense one. You go through it and you're like, all right, if you really don't care about it, you're like, all right, I'm doing this because I have to do it. I'm being told by my boss, I got to go through and do it. Next, quiz, done. All right, get back to work. And your security awareness training program has to be something that is more engaging. It's not just that one CBT, whether it's posters, newsletters, whether you've got a video that shows up every week that people get to watch. You kind of want to get to the mindset where you're doing different things every month or different weeks to help reinforce the information throughout the year. You might have training modules a couple times a year, but then again, you might have a newsletter that goes out once a month as well with information. Whatever that culture, whatever your users are going to accept is what you want to look forward to implementing within your program, so that that new school is a lot more engaging, a lot more interesting, and make people want to engage and have that information stick to them.
And why do you think that's so important, like at this point in time? Is it that the human factor in security has now just become such a prevalent issue because, we've solved the network issues, we've solved the device issues, and now it's like 90% of breaches are being caused by people? Or do you think there's another dynamic at play here?
No, I think we're seeing a lot of impact relating to the human aspect. When over 90%, certainly well over 50% of the data breaches, the attacks that are happening are a result of some sort of human interaction, whether it's an error because they misconfigured a firewall, or they've left a database sitting in a cloud, or somebody clicked on an email. That human aspect. Yeah, you mentioned we've got the technology. There was a report I saw from an identity resource group, where they analyzed a variety of different organizations and their budgets. An organization spent 47% on networking equipment, which is great. We've been seeing budgets go up, but also we've been seeing the data breaches go up. I don't know if that's correlated to the fact that the breach happens and then the cybersecurity group gets the money, and then they can go get the equipment that they need. But 47% of the spending goes towards networking. Then you have like 14% goes to web development, 14% goes to identity management. You have like another 20 plus, or I'm losing my math numbers now, trying to do the numbers in my head, but there's like 24% that goes to EDR, endpoint detection recovery. 3% of the budget goes towards training, towards the human aspect, whether that's training for your developers, training for your security folks, or security awareness and training for your employees. 3%. If you've got $1 million budget, then you've got, what's that? You've got $30,000 that you're going to spend on training. That's not a lot of money that you're spending on your training. And when you've got so much going, so much of the data breaches are a result of people will sit there and go, humans are the weakest link. And for me, that drives me crazy, because they can be the strongest asset. You're just not training them. And if they're not getting that education and training, that's like the big first hurdle. They've got to have that. It's got to be engaging. It's got to be repetitive. It can't be once a year. It's not your checkbox compliance. It's got to be something where you're building up that security culture and improving it, so that, when those phishing emails come in, the people are going to be able to recognize them and spot them. And technology is a major part. I'm not saying that it's got to be all on the humans. It's not got to be technology. It's got to be people, processes, and technology all have to work together to be able to effectively secure your organizations, because we're seeing pipelines and meat producing companies and headphone manufacturers and ferry companies. We're seeing a lot of talk of ransomware in the news, especially in the last month. But I've been following ransomware for the last several years. And of course, it ramped up big time in 2019. But overall, ransomware has been here for a while. It's not going away anywhere. And even though you've got some governments that are sitting there going, well, this is going to be a form of terrorism. Great. It's terrorism. What are you going to be able to do to stop organizations from paying the money? Because if the cyber criminals can't get the money, then it's not a lucrative thing for them anymore. But they are finding new ways to, exploit it even further.
Yeah, and I mean, that stat is incredible, actually. I had never heard it before, but to think that only 3% of a security budget might be allocated to something as critical as the human layer, and especially compared to the other stat of 90% of breaches, being linked to some form of human error, and also the Verizon data breach investigations report, just the sheer volume of human factor misconfiguration, misdelivery, phishing. There's something I think seriously wrong there. And I think for a long time in security, my perspective is that we have really embraced this concept that security is all about the machine layer, or security technology is always about securing technology. And my question to you is going to be, you mentioned people, process, and technology. Where do you think security awareness training kind of has to go next? Like, so we've made great progress in terms of not just having this as a kind of, once a year, people sit in a classroom, they get some donuts and they watch a presentation. We now have this, smaller bite-size sessions of training that are delivered at appropriate points on actual contextual threats. Might be phishing emails, might be something else. Where do we go next? What's that, third paradigm of security awareness training in your mind?
So, the technology is constantly improving. The bad guys, the cyber criminals that are out there, have the same technology. They've got it set up in their environments where they have the same technology that everybody else is buying within, all the different organizations, because they're going through and they're testing their emails against that. So as we continue to improve our technology, they're going to keep figuring out ways to get by it. So the human element, that human layer, it has to be, the emails are getting more and more sophisticated. So the people have to get more and more sophisticated at spotting them. And, the technology is improving. So we've got to be able to improve on the person, on the people as well. And a lot of people will think, yeah, but security is not my business. I'm here doing accounting, or I'm here doing research, or I'm coding. Security is up to the IT guys. And I think what a lot of people miss is that security is everybody's problem. I mean, an InfoSec person will tell you that, yeah, security belongs to everybody. And the way that I look at it, and the way that I explain it, excuse me, the way that I explain it to people is, think about your neighborhood where we live, and you have your home and you want to protect your home, and you start hearing from the neighbors about irrational burglaries that are going on in that neighborhood, where the burglars are coming to the door. They're ringing on the doorbell. Nobody answers. So they go around to the back of the house, don't see anybody home. They smash in a window, climb in, steal whatever they can steal, and take off. Well, if you knew that that's how they were doing that, well, then you might put up some security cameras. You might turn on the security monitoring system. You might have some motion sensor lights, cameras, those kind of things. You might even put a beware of dog sign in your front window. And when your doorbell rings, it plays the sound of barking. So you have that awareness of what's going on in your neighborhood. So you take the proper measures to make sure you protect your home. Within your organization, sorry, let me back up. So in comparison, when you get a phishing email and you click on that link, it's like you're opening up the front door to your home. So in essence, everybody that works in your organization that has email has access to the front door of your network, of your organization. And if they feel that they're not part of the security team, or they don't feel security is their responsibility, or they're going to say, well, the technology should stop that phishing email from coming into my inbox. You're right, it should. But the problem is the bad guys are keeping up and evolving quicker than we can keep up with technology, and replacing it within our organizations because of the budgets and the costs and everything else. So we have to rely on people. If you saw somebody walking in the front door of your organization and they were carrying a shotgun, well, you're certainly going to say something. The same thing applies here. If you see a phishing email with a suspicious link, or there's an attachment, or you recognize that it's a phishing email, you need to have a way to be able to communicate that back to your IT organization, so that they can then use that technology to shut that phishing email down, maybe remove it from all the other mailboxes if it's been sent to them. But that's where the technology comes in. But you, as the employee, the user in that organization, you are guarding that front door. Everybody is, because you've got a laptop that's connected to the internet that has access. And that if a cyber criminal convinces you to open up that front door and you let them in, now, they can get around the network and steal data and lock up the machines and encrypt data and everything else. So it's important that the organizations make sure that their users and their employees realize that, yeah, you're a part of the security office just as much as if you were going to stop somebody from coming in with a shotgun into an office. You're just as important, and you need to be able to spot those. And so we're going to educate you on that. You need to be able to recognize those and prevent, those kind of attacks from happening. So the human aspect is just as important as the network, as the firewalls and the routers and the switches and the machines. It's just another one of the critical assets that you have within your organization.
I think that's a great way to think about it. The front door to the home. It's something I talk to people about. That concept of, it would be insane to think that you could just access the server of an international bank. But actually, if you're a cyber criminal today, you can you can plant something in the inbox of any executive at any organization around the world. You can email the CEO of any organization in the world, and odds are that email is going to get through to their inbox, and there is a chance that they're going to read it. And there's a chance that they're going to click on the bad link or comply with the social engineering request or whatever it is. That is, I still think not enough people understand just how threatening that is from a security perspective and how complex that is to solve. I think both from a technology perspective and also a training perspective. And I think we would completely agree with that. Probably our different sides of the solution here is obviously the first line of defense comes through people understanding, how to identify these threats and what looks like a normal email and what doesn't. And then where we see huge responsibility for technology to play a role is actually in trying to filter these kinds of things before they actually even make it into the inbox. Now, I was going to come back to a point, which was, if people control kind of the keys to the kingdom, really. I mean, that's basically what you're saying is, we think about, well, maybe the information security officer or the information security manager or whoever it is, they own the keys to the kingdom. But actually, it's every single person in the organization who controls an inbox.
Right.
There is this spate of ransomware attacks that are happening, across the world right now. What role does the human factor, do you think, play in ransomware? And some of these attacks that we've seen, I think it's too early to comment on, exactly how they've played out. But what do you see from your vantage point? Do you think that these are linked to the human factor in some way, or human error in some way?
So we know from ransomware attacks on previous ones, the majority of the time they're getting in is through either open RDP sessions or through phishing emails. When it comes to RDP, and I think a lot of that is related with what's happened with the pandemic over the last year. You've had organizations send everybody to work remotely from home. You've maybe still got your on-prem systems. And so the IT folks are sitting there going, oh, shoot, we got to be able to access this. All right, we'll set up an RDP server, and it may not be at large organizations, but even small and medium businesses where they don't have a large IT team. And so they set up those RDP sessions so they can remotely get in and troubleshoot and fix things correctly. And that's the technology aspect of it. From the human factor of it, the security aspect would be to put that session behind a VPN, set up a barrier so that somebody just can't find that server sitting on the internet, because there are search engines that are out there that allow you to find devices connected on the internet. So one of my other passions with regards to the human aspect is I teach cybersecurity at the local college here in Florida. And every semester, I always get the question from one of my students, hey, how do you hack? What is the first thing you do when you want to hack? And the first thing I always say is, well, when you do it, first of all, ethics and morals. And we talk about that. Just because, with great power comes great responsibility. But what I do show them is the search engine allows you to go look at all those internet connected devices. And I bring up that RDP port and basically go, all right, here's a listing of all the devices that are connected in the world to the internet that are searchable, that are using that RDP port. And at the last count that I did, because we just had a new summer session start, I think it was 4.5 million devices that were connected using RDP. To cyber criminals, that's a smorgasbord, because they can now start targeting those. And there's a lot of exploits out there relating to them. And if organizations haven't patched those RDP servers, that's an easy way that the cyber criminals are getting in. And then once they're in on that system, they're pivoting around to different systems and leveraging different exploits to gain access deep into it. When you have the human factor coming into this, one of the things that within an organization that needs to happen is to make sure that they've recognized what are the critical assets in their organization. What is it that makes their business tick? If they lose that, they go out of business. So whether it's intellectual property, whether it's a database full of customer information, or patents, or whatever it is that they may have that's critical to them, they have to be able to identify that and then protect that with additional layers of security, whether it's additional logins, multi-factor authentication, restricting who has access to it. Because if somebody in, and I'm just going to pick on a department, let's say somebody in accounting ends up clicking on a link and the bad guys get in on that system, they shouldn't have access to the R&D department, to the C-suite, to the C-suite systems, or to some of the other critical systems, unless that's actually a part of what their job is. By limiting that access, and I've seen it with some of the ransomware attacks where they get in and they're only able to steal a particular database and hold that for ransom. They're not able to get to the critical systems for that particular organization. And for me, I look at that and go, okay, either they didn't have enough time, they were only able to be in there for a certain amount of time, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 months, 2 hours. They basically needed to get in, drop the ransomware, steal whatever data they could get, and get out. But if they're not getting the crown jewels, the critical assets, keys to, whatever the kingdom is protecting, if they're not able to get to that, that means that organization, to me, has taken some of the necessary steps to protect that critical data. Because you don't want to make it so that if they get in onto anybody's computer, they can get around to any type of data or system in the network. And isolating that is going to go a long way, and being able to protect that helps that human factor as well, and working with the technology aspects.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. It's putting locks on the doors beyond the front door, right? And even if you get through the first one, making it exceptionally difficult to get through the rest. I wanted to come back to the discussion around the new school of training. You recently tweeted about the concept that phishing assessments should be educational and not these gotcha moments, and that businesses should lead with the carrot and not punish with the stick. Love to talk a bit more about that. How do many kind of security teams and CISOs that I speak to really struggle with this concept of how do you actually train people and get them to take it seriously without actually making them feel bad for failing the phishing test, or making them feel bad for actually letting a breach occur? What are your thoughts on that?
So first of all, thank you for following my Twitter account. That's great. I think now I've got 4 people following me, so this is good. When the carrot and the stick, you can't, well, there's another saying, you can't get bees with vinegar. But anyway, a lot of the time people feel that when they click on that phishing link, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job, because they know what happens when somebody clicks on a phishing link. They know if that's a bad guy at the other end of that connection, they've now opened up that door for the bad guys. They get the cold sweats, they get nervous, and they worry about their livelihood, their job, things that might change, loss of income. When it's about money, people get scared. And for so long, people have heard about the phishing stories, and then they hear that, oh my gosh, so-and-so clicked on a link and they got fired. The policy around phishing and links is got to be set by a policy, and that's got to come from the top. And it can't be something where you click on a link and you're fired. It's got to be, you click on a link, okay, you're going to do some remedial training. It sucks. I've been there. Fun story. A couple of weeks ago, within KnowBe4, all the employees, we are constantly phished by our own IT department. We eat our own dog food, so to speak. And ever since I've been hired at KnowBe4, almost 2 years now, after the first week is when it started. I think they gave us the first week to get educated. And I remember my first email that came in, and it said that somebody had logged in with my KnowBe4 credentials over in India. And I was sitting in the office, and I turned to a colleague of mine, and I said, I can't believe this. I've been here a whole week already, and somebody's got my email address, and they're logging in with my Google credentials. How the heck? Hang on a second here. And I turn back around and I hover over the link, and sure enough, it was not a Google link, it was a phishing link. So then I reported it, and sure enough, it popped up. Congratulations, you've spotted one of our phishing attacks. Keep up the good work. And I realized if I hadn't have turned to my colleague and said, holy cow, I can't believe this is happening, I might have actually clicked the link. Well, they got me a couple of weeks ago, and I'd been having this great record up until this time. I was waiting for somebody on a Zoom call. I was having a meeting with a customer. We were going to talk about a presentation I was going to do. And at like 1 minute before the hour, an email comes into my inbox that said, you have somebody waiting on a Zoom call, and they hadn't connected on mine yet. And I immediately went, oh, shoot, am I on the wrong link? Okay, well, let me have a look at this. And I clicked on the link, and it popped up, and it was looking for my KnowBe4 credentials. And I'm like, no, Zoom doesn't do. Oh. And I go back, hover over. Sure enough, they got me. Well, my initial reaction was a bit of anger. I was like, I don't believe this. They got me. It was frustration. But at the same time, I knew, okay, they got me. Why did they get me? I was rushing. I didn't stop. But they knew, our IT guys or our team knew that I had a meeting coming up and sent that in there. Now, my response to that was, okay, that means the bad guys were in my calendar. If the bad guys were in my calendar and sent that, knowing that, we have a bigger problem than just me clicking on a link. They're already in the system anyway. And that is the mindset that a lot of us have to go with, is the cyber criminals you're not protecting them from getting in. They're already in. How do you protect the rest of your network? But getting back to the whole carrot and the stick thing, I realized that was a learning moment. Yeah, they got me. It took a lot, but they got me. Now, ironically, and I've seen this before and experienced it before, if it had been 10 minutes prior before I even got on the call, I knew it would have been fake. If it had been later on in the day or any other time of the day, I knew it would have been fake. But because I was in that moment of, I'm waiting on somebody, it's a customer, don't want to keep them waiting. Oh, shoot, they've come in the wrong link. That's how they got me. But it was a learning moment. And it's like, okay, I really have to make sure I stop and check every single link. It's that important, because in essence, I will have opened up the door. When you've got employees and they have that worry that, oh my gosh, I clicked on the link, I'm going to get fired. It's a matter of coming back to, what's your policy say? Okay, you clicked on the link, you're going to do some training. 6 weeks from now, you did it again. Okay, well, then you've got, your policy's got to have a time frame where that falls off. If they're continually failing every month and they're doing the training, then it needs to kind of elevate to another tier. Okay, now we need to have a conversation with you and your manager, either somebody from the InfoSec department or somebody, but now there needs to be a conversation about it. Now we need to, if it continues to happen and they're not learning, then you got to bring in somebody else to talk about it. Performance plans, additional training. What is it that's not making that employee realize that they need to check all the links? And so if it gets to the point where it's 7-8 times within a year, then maybe there needs to be the consideration that this employee isn't taking the security of their organization seriously enough, and they're too focused, or whatever the case may be, and there may need to be a parting of the ways. But with regards to the carrot, rewards come into play. If you've got people that are spotting those fishes, call them out, recognize them for it. If you've got an internal communication system, or they get a $5 gift card for the coffee shop, or the canteen, or something or even like a top 10 list from the organization. I have a friend of mine who is a CISO for a law firm, and he does a contest every month. Whoever spots the most fishes gets their name on the board and a $25 gift card for Starbucks. These lawyers could care less about the $25 Starbucks card. They want to see their name on that list, and they want to see it at the top. It's a competition for them. That is kind of, I mean, and this is lawyers who are highly competitive anyway. But even in your organization, you want to find what works within your culture to get people to be interested and take it seriously. Whether it's a board, whether it's recognition, whether it's they get a coffee mug, with company swag on it. Everybody loves swag. Well, I know I do. Where you've got a coffee mug, or you've got a new shirt, or whatever else, and you get recognized for that. That goes a long way in getting your organization to feel that culture of, oh, if I spot that phishing email or I report something, I might get rewarded for it. And depending on your budget and depending on what you can afford, that can go a long way, because that extra carrot and not hitting them over the head with the stick can go a long way in improving your security culture in your organization and make it that much more secure.
Yeah, I love that point about, I think it's bringing people on the journey, making them feel like they've got a stake in the security of the company that they work for, but also just in their own security strengths and weaknesses. You mentioned something which sounds like an old concept now, which is you turned and you spoke to your colleague. And of course, about a year ago, the world went remote, and we're now kind of gearing up to go back to the office. But I think most organizations are going to be going to this hybrid workplace environment.
Right.
And, my questions, given that, the world is going to this hybrid way of working, is what do you think the new challenges are going to be when some of us are in the office, some of us are working remotely, that, the people who are in the office are remote the next week? It all kind of changes. I think it's substantially more complex than when things a year ago went from in-person to remote, which had its own challenges.
Right.
Yeah. What's your perspective on this? What do you think organizations need to be thinking about as they adopt this hybrid way of working?
Yeah. I mean, last year, if that phishing email had come in, I would have had to turn to one of my cats going, I can't believe it. Somebody tried to log in. There've been a lot of challenges over the last year with people working from home. And when you've got people on their home networks and then they're coming into the work environment, one of the things organizations want to have, especially medium and enterprise organizations, most likely already have it, is you want to connect a VPN connection from that system connecting into the work environment. If they're openly able to be on their home networks, it's almost like you're now doing bring your own device into the corporate network every week when they come back in and work. But with the work from home environment, you've had a lot of this is where you're relying on the technology. You're relying on the VPNs. You're relying on the endpoint systems to be able to detect anything weird coming in. But also at the same time, now you have dozens and dozens and dozens of mini offices because you've got everybody working from home. And so the training has to be amplified. You have to make sure you're doing it more frequently, reminding people, whether it's, and this is what goes into the culture of the organization, that security culture mindset, and using different engaging methods to communicate, whether it's through newsletters, whether it's through, you've got your InfoSec team stopping in on each of the different department meetings to kind of give a security tip of the week or something. Having those different aspects, different media that you can provide to the employees. The other thing to do is also, depending on your culture, depending on your organization, you want to focus on one or two behaviors that you want to work on at a time. You don't want to try and boil the ocean by fixing everything. Focus on, all right, this quarter we're going to focus on passwords. Next time it's on phishing, but also at the same time reinforcing and keeping everybody up to date on those topics as well. But go through and focus on what behaviors you need to change within your organization when they're working from home. And then, each quarter kind of change it and update it and review and everything else. But focusing on what are the root causes of the different attacks that we can experience from people working at home, address those, and then move on to the next one.
James, thank you so much for joining us and sharing these insights with us. I think it's so timely, it's so important, especially with this rise of ransomware that we're seeing, but also the unknown, really, that we're all going into this hybrid work environment, and the threats are going to be different. They're going to be nuanced, and it's still going to be more important than ever to be focusing on the human factor. Something that we like to do on every podcast is to finish the show by asking our guests some rapid fire questions to know the humans on the Human Layer Security podcast a little bit better.
Sure.
So here goes. So imagine everything in your diary has been cleared. How do you spend your day?
Ooh, how do I spend my day? Well, catching up on movies and TV shows, spend time with the family. Oh, going to Disney World. Disney World's it's only 35 minutes from my house, so that's always fun. Probably checking out a new craft brewery, stocking up my cocktail bar with some new liqueurs, maybe travel somewhere. But those are my ego. Those are things for me. But I think one of the things that I've always done is educating people in cybersecurity. One of the things I said to a dear friend of mine years ago was, if I was financially stable and I didn't have to have a day job, I would do whatever I could to go around to schools, to organizations, and educate people on cybersecurity. But I'm a sucker for any new brewery that opens up here in town. So
I've got to ask, what's your favorite craft brew?
Well, there's one around the corner called Castle Church Brewery. It's a church and a brewery, which is really funny. So you go to church on Sunday morning and have a beer. I mean, that's just a completely different way to do church.
So my next question is, what's the book that you'd recommend to our readers? What's the best book you've ever read?
Oh, that's hard. So as a college professor, I always end my semester with advice and tips for my students. And it's always what podcasts to listen to, who to follow on Twitter besides me. But then I also give them a list of books that they want to read to enhance and grow their cybersecurity. I also talk about some of the fiction books, science fiction books that I've liked. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, love Douglas Adams. But from the best book to read, Roger Grimes's Data-Driven Defense. He's a good friend, but his book, it just looks at security in a totally different way, and it's incredibly thought-provoking. Security awareness, Perry Carpenter's Transformational Security Awareness. But one book that I can pick up anytime and just open and just enjoy reading, Tribe of Hackers from Marcus Carey, Jennifer Jin. They interviewed 70 people, 70 cybersecurity professionals on 17 questions. And each one, they answer differently. And it's really neat just to get a different perspective on the cybersecurity professionals in the industry. Fortunately, I was number 71, so I didn't make the cut of the book because they only went with 70. So
they should have changed it to, they should.
That's the bad joke that I do with it, but it works.
And my final question is, what app could you not live without?
All of them? Yeah. I think right now, one of the ones that I go to most is my chess app, chess.com. It's what I do in my downtime when I'm not reading, when I'm not presenting, I'm not working, teaching. I like to play chess. My dad taught me when I was a young boy, been playing it for years. Picked it up like a lot of people again last year with the series that was on Netflix. But it's great because it kind of keeps the brain active. Strategy, forward thinking, working things out, looking ahead, those kind of things. So right now for me, chess.com is kind of my go-to app that I like to use.
That's awesome. We're going to include links in the show notes to all of these things so you can check them out. James, thank you again. It's been amazing to have you on the show. You've been an incredible guest, and thanks for walking us through your perspective on the new school of security awareness training. I hope to see it in every organization soon.
Yes. So do we.
And that just leaves me to say thank you very much for listening. We'll be back with more human layer security insights in our next episode. But if you can't wait that long, you can visit our blog at tessian.com/blog, where you'll find lots of amazing content, advice, and tips. And if you enjoyed our show, please rate and review it on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.